Yo, sup! The successor of my Fuji X100F is about to hit the shelves at the end of February, so this is my version of a far too late review of the X100F. It is loved by many, but not without its flaws. During the next few minutes, I will try to give you an insight on what it was like for me to use this camera for both photography as well as videography over the past 8 months or so, and at the end give you my thoughts on the next iteration of this camera and what I would have liked to see changed about it myself. Having said that, please keep in mind that I'm not a professional and that I won't focus on the technical details of this camera in this video. I'm not interested in pixel peeping and will only discuss the aspects of this camera that are relevant for the work that I like to do with it. So let's start with the most important elements of this camera and maybe a short note on why I decided to buy it. Since the Canon APS-C DSLR line seemed to be left for dead about a year ago, I decided to get rid of my gear and buy something new. I had the Fuji X100 line on my radar for a long time, but never went for it. After a short period of actually considering breaking the bank and getting the Leica Q2, I decided to finally go with my gut and give the X100F a try. The X100F is a compact fixed lens camera. The main selling points are its stunning looks, the compact form factor, along with the APS-C sized sensor and some nice Fuji glass in front of it. Also, it offers a lot of manual controls, which makes for a more intense photography experience. Or at least, that's what people say on the internet. I have to admit that I was a bit confused by all the control wheels and buttons at first, coming from a Canon camera, but there is good and bad to it, so let's get into the ergonomics and controls. Both are somehow awesome and kind of bad at the same time, but let me explain. The camera is somewhat compact, at least for something with a bigger sensor and compared to most interchangeable lens setups, but it's not as small as a point-and-shoot camera, so it offers some heft and body to grip on. At the same time, the actual grip itself is fairly shallow. It looks great, but if you're only holding onto the camera by this, and especially if you tend to get sweaty hands while gripping onto plastic for longer periods of time, this can get sketchy. The body overall is made out of what I would suspect to be some sort of magnesium or aluminium and feels very solid overall. The grip itself though seems to be some kind of plastic. Don't get me wrong though, the ergonomics are not bad, far from it. All I'm trying to say is that it's not as comfortable to just carry in your hand all day while you're out exploring as you might think. The dials are a similar story. They certainly look great, and I agree with most people on the internet that they offer a more intense and involving way of taking photos and changing setups. Once you got the hang of them, they really are fun to use. The one downside though is that they are really easy to turn, which is nice when you want to change settings on the fly, but annoying when you just took your camera out of the bag trying to take a quick shot only to find out that your shutter speed, exposure and aperture settings are completely messed up. But hey, you can't have it all, I guess. I would love to see a lock on the exposure wheel though, since this is the one that gets turned by accident the most and the one that I actually use the least. You can of course go on manual all the time, but since I have at least the ISO in automatic for most of the time, the exposure wheel stays relevant for me. Other than that, the body is close to perfect in my opinion. It looks like an old rangefinder type of camera, and it kind of still is. While you have a screen on the back, I only ever use this when filming video, changing settings or viewing back photos. I do a lot of photography with the integrated digital viewfinder. The X100F does have an actual analog viewfinder, which also features some framing lines, but in my experience they were off quite a lot. Since framing is very important to me, this was a no-go, so I simply used the digital viewfinder all the time. The digital viewfinder itself is not the best, and especially colors tend to be off, but it's good enough in my opinion, so no complaints here. What's really annoying though is that when you are in digital viewfinder only mode, you can't use the back screen to show your menus. For some reason, the menu is shown on the viewfinder as well, which I find irritating as hell. Maybe there's some way to change that, but I haven't been able to figure it out, and it's a stupid setting to begin with. So I hope they will change that in software, or at least for the next model. The main selling point of this camera is the fixed 23mm f2.0 lens. The 35mm full-frame equivalent offers a great all-round lens that is usable for most situations. I have mixed feelings about it though. On one hand, I love it. That is why I always come back to taking this camera with me. even though I have by now also bought a Fuji X-T30 with a variety of lenses. I love the field of view, I love how the images look, and I love how natural good photos come with it. The process of taking photos with this camera, for me, is as simple as looking around with my eyes, finding something that I think is beautiful or interesting, raising the camera in front of my eyes and taking the photo. The field of view is very close to what you would see with your own eyes, and the f2 aperture offers a nice shallow depth of field for most situations. So if you ever had the feeling that you were struggling to capture the aesthetic and the feeling of a moment in a picture, as if you were experiencing it through your own eyes, well, that's what this camera is made for. It's hard to put into words the joy that this camera can give you once you got the hang of it. The autofocus, while being a bit hit or miss at times, also mostly doesn't get in the way of you having fun. On the other side though, the camera is at the same time obviously limited by this as well. Obviously, sometimes photos are interesting to us exactly because a camera paired with the right lens can capture more than what your eyes can see. So you can zoom into situations to get a close-up view of something that is happening far away, or completely blur the background of your subjects, or have a wide field of view of the inside of some impressive building. You name it, but none of that is what the X100F is for. You can't really fault the camera for that, since you probably knew what you were getting into when buying it, but at least for me, that wish to capture those kinds of images and situations as well never went away, which is precisely the reason why I decided to get the Fuji X-T30 about 6 months after buying the X100F. As I said though, this is not really a fault of the camera, but you should keep in mind what this camera is and what it is not when getting it. It's an incredible tool made for a specific kind of shooting, and unlike some rich cameras, it's not trying to be all cameras to all people. If this is what you want though, you won't be disappointed. In terms of image quality, the lens is lovely in most situations. As I said in the beginning, I won't go into the technical details or pixel peeping. The one thing I do want to mention though, is that it gets way too soft when wide open and very close to the subject you're shooting. Other than that, it is an awesome piece of glass in my opinion. At last, let's talk about the video mode. Most people don't even mention the video mode when reviewing this camera, and I get why. This is a very photography-centric camera. It doesn't even offer a record button or any other quick way to enter video mode. You have to press the mode button and select video mode. There is also no kind of image stabilization and the audio is mediocre at best. Also, the focusing motor is very noisy and there's no 4K. So what you end up with in most situations is a shaking full HD video with bad audio. That doesn't sound too great, does it? When I broke my X-T30 in the same month I started this YouTube channel, I had to somehow make do with only the X100F for filming though, since I wasn't in the mood to quit or to stop producing videos until the X-T30 was back from repairs. So there are whole videos on this channel that were filmed solely on the X100F, and I linked a couple of examples in the description. And at least in my mind, those do still look quite nice, if I do say so myself. The video autofocus overall is very usable in my opinion, and the overall picture quality is as good as it is for stills. So all you have to do with this is work around the issues, and let's be real. All cameras have mediocre internal microphones, and no matter what kind of stabilization your camera or lens has, it's never as stable as you want it to be, especially when you are on the move. For me, audio wasn't really important, but I still went ahead and bought a shotgun microphone for 20 bucks, the Boya MM1, which completely got rid of the audio problems I was having. The stabilization is obviously only an issue when you're on the go. If you're stationary, use a tripod, problem solved. While on the go, you could use something like a GorillaPod, but if you really want to get those smooth shots, you might want to consider a gimbal. I went for the Feiyutech G6 Plus. The X100F is easily small enough to fit on it, and it's with this simple setup that we do all of those sweet following shots. So while the X100F is certainly not meant to shoot video with it, you can still output some great footage. So what would I like to see changed in the next iteration? Apparently Fuji will go for a flip screen, which I wouldn't want on this camera, even though I know that it can be useful. The charm of this camera to me is, as I said, to simply put it in front of your eyes and capture what you see. This camera is a compromise in and of itself, so if I can take shots from all angles, that's fine by me. But to be fair, the way they seem to have implemented it into the new model looks pretty nice, and I don't think it will get in the way. What I really wanted to see are the following features: 4K video, preferably up to 60 frames per second, weather sealing for the body, sharper image wide open, less noisy, more precise and faster autofocus, and locking mode wheels. All of these are pretty much self-explanatory, but if I could only choose one, I would go for the weather sealing. And boy, for the most part, they made all of my dreams come true. Since I want this camera to be with me and ready to go at all times, weather sealing is a huge deal for me. I want this to work while out hiking and in rough conditions. Some of the most beautiful moments happen when the conditions go really bad, in rainstorms on mountains, on windy beaches and so on. I want to know that this camera won't get in the way of me capturing my life, because that is what I bought it for. With that being said, I have used my X100F as well as my X-T30 in the rain and snow, just as I have done previously with my Canon 70D, and haven't had any issues yet. I have, however, seen other people do the same thing and wreck their camera. That's one of the reasons why I carry a handkerchief most of the time, to wipe down my camera. So it will be really nice to have that peace of mind when using the camera in harsh conditions. To sum it up, I wanted the X100V to be the poor man's Leica Q2 with an APS-C sensor. And at least as far as I'm concerned, Fuji absolutely delivered on that. But anyway, that's it for today. I hope you liked this video, even though this review came way too late. Overall, I really enjoyed this camera and would recommend it. I am fairly sure that I will upgrade to the X100V though, for all of the aforementioned reasons. If you are tempted as well, but don't want to spend the money, you could also try to get the now retired X100F for a good price on the second-hand market. I know mine will be up on eBay soon. Despite its age, it is still a great camera. If you have any questions, suggestions or whatever, feel free to join me in the comments down below. I usually don't do camera reviews, but if you're interested in gear videos, EDC, travel and outdoor related topics, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't. Thanks for watching and take care.